Shelton and Sydney Tafler first met at a party in London during World War II. Both were actors, both graduates of the RADA. In the autumn of 1943, she was cast in a play called Antony and Anna and was offered 3 suggestions for her leading man. One of the names was Sydney's, and remembering him from the party, that is who she chose. By early summer of 1944, they were engaged. Joy made the proposal on the top deck of a London bus travelling along the Strand.
In August of that year, Sydney began work for the Old Vic Theatre Company, which was led at the time by 2 actors, Laurence Olivier and Ralph Richardson, and a director, John Burrell.
Meanwhile, Joy had found her greatest success to date in a film called Waterloo Road. In September, she opened in an American comedy, Three's a Family, at the Savile Theatre in London's West End.
The Old Vic season played to packed houses, and in the course of this run, on the 7th of November 1944, Joy and Sydney were married at Westminster Register Office. He was 28 years old and she 22.
Joy fell pregnant about a month after the wedding.
In the spring of 1945, Sydney and the Old Vic went on tour to Glasgow and Manchester and then into newly liberated Europe. Joy's play Three's a Family was still running in London. It was the first time that the newly married couple had been apart.
Sunday the 15th of April, 1945. My darling, this separation is going to be unbearable. The moment the train left, my heart dropped down to my boots. Until that moment, I hadn't realised that I was going to be alone, at least not properly. I wandered round town for about half an hour. I couldn't bear the thought of going back to the flat to meet your breakfast things in your pyjamas just as you'd left them. I do hope your food is all right. I had awful visions of the milk soaking everything and the butter melting. I wish I'd known that Michael Wall wasn't bringing anything. I'd have packed some for him as well. I had a phone call from a fan just now. I told her to write me care of the studios. She asked to speak to Miss Joy Shelton, the film star. She should see me first thing in the morning. I wonder when I shall get a letter from you. I'm going to start ticking off the days until you get home. There are 28 days at the outside, possibly only 21. But then you leave for the continent. After that, please God, we'll never be parted again. All my love, dearest. And Tiddler, too. Your very lonely wife, Joy. Savile Theatre, Monday evening. I'm longing to get a letter from you. I spend my time imagining what you're doing, on as well as off the stage, until I wonder how I remember my lines. I arrived at the theatre feeling very healthy, but I don't feel so good now. Harry's breath is like a dustbin. I shall be sick on his face if he's not careful. Tiddler seems to be a bit more obvious. If this goes on, I shall have to give up the show sooner than I expected. I miss you terribly, darling. I can't settle to anything. Hurry and get this beastly tour over. Tuesday. I was so disappointed when no letter arrived from you today, but I suppose it's awkward for you to write until you get settled in. Do please write soon, though, even if it's only a postcard. I'm reading a book which uses quite a number of Yiddish words. Is goy a male shiksa, or is it just an alternative? The sun is too hot for working. Why couldn't it have rained whilst you were away? It seems such a waste. Now that you're away, I find that I can't cope at all with alterations in my plans. I fly off the handle at the least provocation and bang my head against stone walls. You're a necessity, you know. I'll send you clean pants, towels, etc. on Friday. What is a shad chan? Wednesday. I don't think I should be wearing my grey costume now. The waistband is too tight, and I'm afraid the skirt won't hang properly if I have it altered. Last night, Harry tripped and banged into me, and I, without thinking, yelled, "Oh, do be careful of Tiddler!" He laughed and said, "Who is Tiddler?" And I just said, "Tafler Jr." Of course, he took it as I expected him to, not believing a word. I'm longing for everyone to know, but I'll try to keep it secret as long as possible. I love you, I miss you, and I want you so. Thursday. What's happened? Why haven't you written? I've been watching for the post, ringing Mummy, pestering the stage door. I'll search the flat when I get back. I can't believe you'd leave me so long without a letter. I tried talking to your picture, but you look so stern. When you come back, you must have a nice, friendly one done. I want Tiddler to be exactly like you if he's a boy. Friday. I discovered 2 letters from you.
314 Renfrew Street, Glasgow, Sunday, April the 15th, 1945. My darling wife. I've just got back to the digs after a long walk round Glasgow with Michael Waugh. Terribly tired, but the remainder of my whiskey, which of course Michael shared with me, having finished his own, has partially refreshed me. The journey really wasn't too bad at all. The chicken was a minor sensation. Dearest everything was lovely. The salad cream, crine, cheese, all went down extremely well. Mrs. Campbell is a real old Scotty and a darling. I think it's going to be very good here. She's going to arrange about my ration book, which of course is a great relief to me. I can't bear queuing up in food offices. It's a most odd room, typically diggy, very long and thin, decorated only by your photo, which is by my bed. It's a most peculiar feeling to be away from you. I feel only half here. To make matters worse, the beds are double. Did you do the Times crossword today? I failed miserably. You see, my darling, I need you. I miss you horribly. God bless you, my darling. Look after yourself. Your ever-loving husband, Sydney. P.S. My love to Tiddler. P.P.S. When writing, be sure to put care of Mrs. Campbell. P.P.P.S. I love you.
Your letters must have arrived yesterday afternoon, and Mrs. Shrub had put them with some papers and then had put other papers on top. When I got home, trying to be tidy, you'll notice, I put the papers in the cupboard. However, this morning, in a frenzy of depression, I turned the flat upside down. I knew you must have written. I've just finished reading the letters for the 4th time. It seems we're in the same boat re-double beds. I sleep with that postcard photo of you under one pillow and cuddling the other. I can't do the crossword either. It seems a case of united we stand, divided we fall.
I've not said so, but I am terribly proud of you for wanting a child now. You could so easily have funked it and said that we should wait, especially after the success of your film. Tonight's show ran 15 minutes longer than usual. John Burrell put a notice on the board to the effect that the theatre was twice the size of the new, and as a result, everyone yelled their heads off. I've never heard such a shouting match. It improved after about an hour, as they were physically incapable of keeping up the din and had to lower their voices through sheer exhaustion. Still, the reception was terrific. Mrs. Campbell has a granddaughter of 20 months, and we've taken to each other, so I'm putting in some practice.
John Burrell is an old woman. He ought to live in a cottage with a black cat and a shawl. If an actor can't gauge the size of a theatre for himself, he ought to give up the stage. If you can come home from Glasgow, I promise you, you won't have to lift a finger to do anything. Let me know in good time so I can get things in. If you feel too tired to get back, though, you know I'll understand. Tiddler's 4¼ months tomorrow, and we're 5½ months. It was lovely of you to say of how much you thought of my having a baby. Believe me, my darling, it was no sacrifice. I wanted our baby more than anything in the world, except you, of course. I always want my career at home to come first. I'm so glad you've palled up with Mrs. Campbell's granddaughter. I'm terrified of meeting our infant for the first time. I hope it likes me.
A shadchan is a matchmaker, a man who arranges marriages. And you're quite right about Goy. Arms and the Man didn't go too badly, but they're a sticky audience here. Hard-headed Glasgow folk who seem to sit back and say, "Go on, make me laugh." You won't forget to send my underwear up for the weekend, will you, darling? There's no need to worry about food, anyway. Mrs. Campbell gives me hot milk at night and tea and the paper in bed in the morning. The only thing I miss is you, and that I miss very much indeed. She's just been in here for an hour talking. And talking, I've had the whole of her family's history. It's quite incredible about this baby. She's only 20 months old, but always up when I get in. John Burrell came into the dressing room after the show and wants me to discuss next season with him tomorrow afternoon at 3, so I'll let you know what transpires.
Mrs. Campbell sounds like a dear. I'm so glad she's feeding you well. But our baby won't still be up at 10 o'clock at 20 months. When it's small, it will naturally have its last feed then, but not at that age.
Michael hasn't come back with me tonight. He had nothing to do, so went out by himself. Returned to the dressing room after the show absolutely pickled and trying to borrow £1 for me to go out again. He said to get a woman. I wouldn't lend it to him, but our stage director, John Sullivan, did, so God knows when he'll be back. Just sitting here thinking. I love you very much, my darling. Marriage is really a wonderful thing. I used to dread responsibility, the thought of having children and being tired. How different and exciting it is. The lovely feeling of completeness. I never think of myself as myself now, only of us. And soon, please God, there will be a baby too. Darling, if I'm being sentimental, it's because it's late at night, and I'm very, very lonely.
I love you to be sentimental because that's the way I feel. Marriage to you is unbelievably wonderful. Poor Michael. He's a thorough mess, isn't he? It's a pity to see such a talented person acting like any of those tennerpenny club boys. I do hope he didn't get a woman.
I can hear Michael's key in the door, so I'll stop now. He's just come in. It looks all right.
I'll say good night. I love you so much.
God bless you, darling. Thursday, April the 19th, 1945. No news of my chat with Burrell yet, as he made a mistake and it's not till tomorrow. I know that we're doing Oedipus Rex, The Critic, Henry IV Parts 1 and 2, Keeping in Vanya, and occasionally Arms and the Man. Larry is Oedipus, of course, and I went to the public library and read it. It's all Larry. I'm afraid that Greek tragedy is not my cup of tea. I could see myself being roped into the chorus, which would be more than I could bear.
I don't think I should be able to sit through Oedipus Rex. I can't bear Greek tragedy. And I wonder why they're doing The Critic.
Larry was saying to me on the side of the stage tonight how good you were at the Vic auditions. He's a very sweet person, really. I told him we were having a baby, and he said, so wistfully, yes, it's a fine thing to have a family.
Poor Larry. It must have been an awful blow when Vivian lost the baby. I'm glad he thought I was good at the audition. If I'd tried a bit harder, I might have been with you at the Vic. Although I couldn't have gone abroad with the tiddler, could I? So perhaps it's for the best. The matinee here today doesn't look good, and I think we've had it. It's awful when you have to drag the laughs out of them, and I feel too tired to try.
I hope you're drinking your milk and orange juice. I'm dreading this damn interview about next season tomorrow. And I've still nowhere to stay in Manchester.
I've missed your phone call. I'm so unhappy. I could cry. Annetta called me into her dressing room, but I'm sure the bell didn't ring on my phone as both doors were open and I'd have heard it. I've been praying you'd ring again. It's awful to feel we could have spoken. I've just tested the phone bell and it can be heard quite plainly in Netta's room. The fireman took the call and he can't have connected you properly. Oh, how I hate this wretched place. The grand scene between David and Kitty went better than it ever has gone before. We seem to get new laughs all over the place. I hope that doesn't mean the show's going to resurrect itself. My patience is exhausted.
It's always so nice to get your letters. They arrive mornings, and Mrs. Campbell brings them in with my cup of tea. Laurie Evans came to me on Saturday night and said that though it was agreed that my salary should be £18 from next season, as an expression of goodwill and bonhomie, the directors of the company were prepared to give me £20 all through. So I said, all right, but tell John Burrell that we've still one or two things to clear up. I don't suppose I will get out of the understudies, but what I might do is wangle myself out of the chorus in Oedipus, which would mean that I have that rehearsal time free, and not have to get into the theatre at night till quite late. I still have nowhere to stay in Manchester. I might have to book into the Midland. I will arrive home next weekend at about 8:30 Sunday morning, I should think. I can't wait to see you. I'm catching the 9:38 from Glasgow. They'll have to let me off the curtain call.
I'm so glad that they've given you £20. And I like the goodwill and bonhomie part. I'm thrilled that you're coming home this weekend. It doesn't seem possible after all these dreary days. Mrs. Shrub went off with the curtains today, but has promised faithfully to have them back by Saturday. I told your mother that we'd pop over sometime on Sunday evening. Papa Tafler was very sweet this morning. He asked me how I was, and I said, not too bad, but I'm so tired, and I can't think why. And he said, of course you can. And you must take great care of yourself and try not to worry about anything. And when I said how thrilled I was that you were coming home on Sunday, he replied, nothing could stop him from coming home to see you, even for a little while, and patted my hand. It won't be long now before you're home again. I do hope you can catch the earlier train on Saturday night. Don't worry about the cost of the Midland. Will you have to share a bed with Michael? I hope not. If you do, when you wake up in the morning, don't expect him to snuggle onto your shoulder.
I've been simply livid all day. John Sullivan refused to let me off the curtain call because he said that I could catch the 11 o'clock train. I pointed out that this meant changing at Carlisle at 3 in the morning, but he was absolutely adamant. So I said I was going to ask Ralph. He said he couldn't care less if I did. I was so angry by this time that I'd made up my mind quite firmly that should Ralph refuse, I would say that whatever the consequences, I intended to miss the call and catch the train. Luckily, Ralph said it was okay, so, please God, I'll be home on Sunday morning sometime between 8 o'clock and 9:30. I can't quite believe it. It seems ages since I've seen you. I miss you dreadfully, darling. The Midland Hotel, Manchester, Monday night, April the 30th, 1945. When I first saw you in your housecoat, looking just the tiniest bit bigger, and your face with no makeup and yet so very pretty, an indescribable feeling of tenderness came over me. You were going to be the mother of my child. There is an old Jewish idea that marriage comes first and love afterwards. It says in the Bible that Jacob married Rebekah and he loved her, which the rabbis say shows that real love follows marriage. I have never loved you as much as I do now. When you talk about lighting the candles and use words of Yiddish, it means so much to me. The show went very well, but I hated every second of it. I loathe it here in Manchester, and full board at the Midland Hotel is £10 a week. I was thrilled to open the paper and find that Waterloo Road is here, and you've got very good billing. I will go and see it, though I know it will depress me. When you run off with Stuart Granger, I can't help identifying myself with Johnny Mills. You're so good in it that I have to bite my lip to stop believing it's true.
I'm feeling so lonely. I shall be glad when this show is over. How people can be in something that runs for a year, I don't know. Lately, it is difficult to remember my lines. My mind goes a complete blank. Maybe it's something to do with Tiddler. Anyway, tonight I muffed a line during the bed scene and didn't give Netta the right cue. She didn't turn a hair, but when I made my exit saying, I've forgotten the baby's bottle, George, our stage manager, was waiting for me and said, that's not the only bloody thing you've forgotten. I could have killed him.
I went with Michael to see Waterloo Road again today. There's no doubt at all about how good you are. I wish I could get Larry to go and see it. If I'm not rehearsing on Monday morning, I can come down on Saturday night. I'll get the midnight sleeper on Saturday and arrive home about 7:45 or 8. Don't come and meet me, but you can have a nice cup of tea waiting if you like.
I do hope that all this travelling at the weekend won't be too much for you. Now that people in the show know about Tiddler, I'm treated like an invalid, and yet, day by day, I look more hearty, although my back does get tired. I feel I need your support, and your arms are so far away. I love you. I miss you, and you know how much I need you.
This morning I saw someone coming down the stairs here that I thought I knew, and started to go and speak to him, when I realised it was Geraldo, the band leader. Before I go to bed, my darling, I love you. That sounds so small, but it means everything. Everything. Always remember that, my dearest. Whatever happens, all my life and thoughts are for you. God bless you.
Saville Theatre, Monday night, 7th of May, 1945. Coming to the theatre was agony this evening. It took 20 minutes to get out of Piccadilly Station. Crowds of Yanks and their girlfriends wanting to see the news signs announce VE Day. I'm afraid I can't work up any enthusiasm. The outlook seems so uncertain. I've rung Mr. Goldstone at your synagogue about my converting. I am to ring him again at 9:30 Thursday morning to see if he has time. Tuesday, 8th of May. The crowds have been here since 8 a.m. this morning. The crush was so terrific that I cut up St. Martin's Lane where people were only 4 deep. I arrived complete with Tiddler, but very hot. Feels like a waste of time doing the show. The audience will be rotten, I expect. I know that you're hurt about my not wanting to join your family for their party. It's nothing to do with feeling alien. I just want to be quiet. All this jollification has left me cold. I'm horribly lonely. My heart seems full of tears, and I could no more go to a party than fly. I had a fit of sobbing this afternoon. I better control myself. The maternity book says I mustn't get upset or it will affect the baby. I'm looking forward to meeting Mr. Goldstone. I've wanted to ever since we got married. I know everything will turn out all right. God wouldn't be so cruel when we are so happy.
I've woken up this morning with a stinking cold. I hope that you got home all right last night. I hear that the West End was very crowded. This weekend showed me that it is your desire, just as much as my own, for our child to be brought up as a Jew. But darling, I want you to know this, and I mean what I'm going to say. I definitely don't want you to change your religion. All the time you were learning, you will be hating it, and be tortured with doubts as to whether what you were doing was the right thing before God. I love you too much for that. We will manage, somehow. Perhaps one day you will want to be as I am. But now it might be something to come between us. See Mr. Goldstone, and let him know how you feel. He can teach you how to run a Jewish home so that you will be able to share in everything with our child. And then you can teach him or her, as well as me, so that we can really be together. All the company seemed to have celebrated our victory in Europe in some way or another last night, but I felt so lousy I went to bed at 10:30. Larry at today's matinee was still pretty tight, having been drinking till 6 o'clock in the morning.
Darlingest, I do love you so. When you're home next week, I'd love to see what Piccadilly looks like at night. I expect they'll have some of the signs lit, but I daren't go there until the excitement is over. How wondrous it will be for little kids who have never seen lights at night before.
I suppose it's been pretty exciting in town these past few days. I wish we could have been together. It's so dreary to be apart at a time like this. My cold has developed into an absolute stinkeroo.
I'm feeling a bit groggy myself. It was pretty tough getting back last night, and I got caught up with some half-hysterical people, which scared me. It's all such a waste of time considering the size of last night's house. I would have liked to walk out and come straight up to Manchester.
Oh, darling, you know the new exit I do is Nicola. Well, I got around. True, a little one. At both matinee and evening performance. I was jolly thrilled. Michael is gone, thank goodness, and they've moved me into a single room. Actually, it's very pleasant. Nicer than the one we had before.
I phoned Goldstone at 9:30 this morning, but he had been called out. However, I have found the answer to one of my questions. I can't think why your mother hasn't told me before. If I am not a Jewess, then our baby cannot be Jewish. I already made up my mind that your religion is to be mine. When we were first married, I knew that eventually I should change. Although there were 1,001 little ifs and buts, but now, thinking it over calmly, I can see no reason why I shouldn't fix it as soon as possible. When you return from abroad, you will return to a Jewish home and a Jewish partner.
Darling, it will be so wonderful if you have pulled it off completely when I get back. I'm not worrying, darling, I promise you, because I know that you will do it.
If I learn how to kosher meat, will I be able to buy it at any butcher's? It's wonderful to think that I shall be seeing you on Sunday morning.
Aboard. Saturday, 9:30 p.m., May the 19th, 1945. We are, at the moment, lying just off Southend, where we've been all day. The ship is rolling badly, and it has a most peculiar effect on the stomach. I am waiting only for the moment when we will be together again. I think this last week has been the happiest of all our married life. I love you completely. Sometimes when I looked at you, I found myself as thrilled as when I was seeing you for the first time. I never dreamt that life could hold so much, or that I could ever love anyone as I love you. I shall end now, so this letter can be posted in England when the ship gets back to Tilbury tomorrow night. Also, I feel odd, and I want to get up on deck. Antwerp, Monday night. I woke at 5 a.m. to find the ship doing everything but a double somersault. I still managed to eat 2 slices of spam, and then flew up on deck in order to prevent anything unpleasant occurring. I was very pleased that I did, because for the first time in my life I saw the sun rise, and a magnificent sight it was too. The countryside is very charming on the way to Antwerp, and everywhere are British and Belgian flags. We're staying at the best hotel in town, and, thank heaven, I have a room to myself. I had a lovely bath, and then 2 brandies, before a magnificent dinner of chicken, and 2 bottles of red wine between 7 of us, which worked out to about 2 shillings a head. After dinner, I went out for a walk to see the city. It's very fine, and apparently prosperous. There are dozens of cafes with their own little orchestras where you can sit and drink outside on the pavement under umbrellas. It is packed with military and civilians, all enjoying a pleasant evening with music and a glass of beer. There's none of the earnest drinking that you find in London. It's all much more convivial. How I wish you were here with me. When you're in love, you feel that you want to share everything. It would mean so much more if you were here to see it with me. Darling, am I right in thinking your birthday is June the 22nd?
June 3rd.
If I can't be with you, I want to drink to your happiness and health. It was Peter's birthday yesterday, that's why we had the wine. So we'll have some more to celebrate yours. The food couldn't be better here, and everything is excellent. I don't suppose that it will always be like this, as in a fortnight's time we go to Germany. The people here still haven't got over their liberation, and we receive smiles and welcomes from all. Some of the clothes are rather quaint. The women's hats are enormous and cover their head like a huge canopy. But the boys wear a sort of exaggerated +4s. One might call them +8s, as they come almost down to the ankles. We saw our theatre yesterday. It is really wonderful. Seats about 1,800 people, and all the dress circle and upper circle is divided into boxes. Afterwards, we came back to the hotel, and I had a couple of dances with Pauline Wynne, and all the time I tried to imagine that I was dancing with you, but it didn't work very well. 20 times a day, I wish that you were with me. There's no laundry here, so I am now going to wash my socks, but don't let it establish a precedent. Wednesday. We opened Arms and the Man last night. All the military jokes went terribly well, and the soldiers whistled and cheered like mad at the end. We've been invited to dinner by some brigadier. Printed invitations, all very formal. I chatted with my dresser tonight. He was here all through the occupation and says that most of them thought that the British would never come. He said the excitement when we landed at Normandy was terrific. It seems so real when one is actually here. Our hotel was the German HQ only 8 months ago. The dresser made himself extremely popular with me by looking at your photo and saying, in very broken English, "Your wife?" When I said yes, he said, "Oh, she is very nice, especially the air." I didn't tell him it wasn't all yours. I love you more than anything in the world, my darling. Whatever should happen in my career, I will never put it before my love for you, our home, and life together. Deep in my heart, I prayed that one day you would want to be Jewish so that we could really be one together. I could never have believed that marriage could be so perfect. Thursday. The Brigadier's party last night was a huge success. The champagne flowed and the food was simply wonderful. The officers were all extremely nice blokes, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I felt a bit peculiar this morning. We're doing Richard tonight. Gosh, how I hate that play. Can't wait for it to finish. Must go down now, as it's getting near. Friday. I heard this morning of a soldier who walked 14 miles into Antwerp to see Richard, and at the end he said it was worth every step. Honestly, when you hear things like that, you feel that it's worth coming here just for him alone.
I went to see Dr. Jacobowitz at the Beth Din yesterday. He was so gentle and understanding, but it soon became clear that it will be impossible for me to become a Jewess under Orthodox law before the baby is born. I'm glad I went. I feel we've definitely tried. His last words were, "Go on as you have done. Help your husband in the keeping of his religion, and I hope you'll both be very happy."
Brussels is a fine city with wide streets and imposing buildings. I got to a square yesterday morning that was enchanting. The buildings are grey stone and gold, and in the square are flower sellers, and on the morning I was there, a Scottish Army band. It was delightful. All the Belgians crowded round, and at the end of each melody they clapped. There's a great difference of opinion here about King Leopold. The shops are filled with his pictures. The Catholics want him back, but the socialists don't. And everywhere you see abdication scrawled up, and then someone comes along and draws a line through it. There are lots of lovely baby things in the shops, and it's just a bit cheaper than London, but everything else is at inflated prices. Asked again, but still no letter from you. I'm enclosing some drawings of hats. Diana did them for me. Shall I bring you one home?
The company's Henry IV was broadcast last night, and I'm still your most ardent fan. Your performance was so full of vitality and humour without losing sense. I had mixed feelings about the rest of the production. I think I have an average ear for Shakespeare, but at times I found it difficult to follow. The music struck me as, "This is Radio Shakespeare." Why does discord suggest the classics? I told Mr. Goldstone at your synagogue about my meeting with Jacobowitz, and he says it might be easier for me to become a Reformed Jewess. They are more welcoming. He has recommended I speak with Mr. Reinhardt at the West London Synagogue.
How's everything going, my darling? The time seems to be going so slowly. My only real interest here is to count the days till I see you. I'm looking forward to flying to Hamburg, though I expect I'll be pretty sick.
It seems strange without a letter. I expect I shall get several, all at once by tomorrow's post.
Happy birthday, my own darling. It's 1 o'clock Sunday morning. We just got back after the show, and Peter and I have drunk to you. We're going to grab 3 hours sleep before we fly to Hamburg. We opened my bottle of whiskey specially for your birthday. I hope I'm not sick on the plane. It was a special performance of Richard tonight for the Belgian population of Ghent, and at the end they just whistled and cheered like mad. I love you with all my heart, my darling.
I went to see Mr. Reinhardt at the Reform Synagogue today, and things aren't going to be quite as easy as Mr. Goldstone thought.
I rose and had some breakfast and left for the airport, and suddenly I felt a tingling in my tummy as I realised that I was really going to fly. The company split into 2 Dakotas, which are troop transport planes, and there was no comfort at all, just long benches down the sides. The engine started, and we were strapped in, and then we were off. Just nothing. One minute we were on the ground, and the next, in the air. The real excitement is when you look out of the window. You're perched right up in the sky, and yet feel completely safe and secure. They said it was a perfect day for flying, not a jolt or dip or anything. After about 20 minutes, we crossed the frontier, and then it started. Essen, Dortmund, the Ruhr. Unending miles of complete destruction. The pilot took us down to 1,500 feet so that we could see it. Factory upon factory, railway sidings, marshalling yards, all just shells. You think you've seen bombing. Hamburg is a solid pile of rubble. It just doesn't exist as far as I can see. Our hotel is all that's standing.
Mr. Reinhardt said that if I were to be made a Reformed Jewess, I could not run an Orthodox home, and we would have to attend different synagogues. The only way he will feel justified in giving his consent is if you become a Reformed Jew. He wants to know your views on the matter and is going to write to you. He says he can't make something possible for you that your own synagogue cannot, or he would be poaching. Now, dearest, don't get worried. The best way is to say that you have been brought up in the Orthodox religion, but that you feel some of the laws have not moved with the times. Don't make him think you're taking the easiest way. He may want to know if you've ever attended a Reform service. Make him think that you're interested. He asked me a lot of questions on Jewish religion. Some of the names of the feasts and fasts I knew, but various Hebrew words I didn't know at all. He said that he couldn't see it being fixed by September, as it was not a thing to be rushed. He seems wary in case we're going into this light-heartedly. He'll wait for your reply. Then I'm to study when he arranges it. It won't take me long. We have over 12 weeks before Tiddler is born, and that's loads of time. When two people love as we love and want anything so much, then nothing is impossible.
It feels most odd to be waited on by the very people who have been persecuting the Jews for years. They are all well-fed, well-clothed. These are the people who have perpetrated all the horrors of the last few years. Ordinary people, just like you and me. Yet they have committed, or stood by and allowed to be committed, the foulest atrocities the world has ever known. There is a very strong non-fraternization order. I feel no desire to fraternize. I can't bear them to be near me. I loathe it when they take my plate away or light my cigarette. To make matters worse, other members of the company smile and thank them till I want to vomit. They look so normal. There is no evil in their faces, and it suddenly dawns on you why. It is because what has been going on is normal to them. Darling, I'm sorry to go on, but I have no one to tell but you. I just feel so unhappy and numb. On the coach journey, Larry was even more vehement than I. He swore if he saw a well-fed horse. 6 more weeks, and then home to you. I never want to be parted from you again.
We are nearing our 7th month of marriage. Darling, I adore you. You've been away far too long. People say that it's good to be parted now and again. You appreciate one another more, but I think that's a silly idea. Why, it was bad enough when you were home and had to leave me for a broadcast or some appointment.
At long last, your letters have arrived. 9 of them. Also the letter from Mr. Reinhardt, after a long delay. Don't worry, my dearest. It means that I will be with you for at least part of the time when you are at your studies. I'm so proud of you that you don't let these setbacks discourage you. Do you remember that I always said that we can't expect happiness just to fall into our laps? It's something that we have to fight for. Our love is such a wonderful basis. And darling, when ultimately you do become a Jewess, you will always know that it wasn't made easy for you. Incidentally, I'm making sacrifices too. I get pretty lonely out here, and there are endless possibilities, but I'm being very good. I don't feel too well this morning. Larry and Peter and I sat up till 3 o'clock talking and, I'm afraid, drinking rather a lot. It's rather funny on the continent. When the waiters take a tip from you, they say please instead of thank you. It was most confusing at first. And something else that's rather odd is being saluted by German soldiers. We just don't know what to do about it. Of course, we're honorary officers and are all dressed in uniform. But it's even worse when the British soldiers salute. That's really embarrassing.
Well, I've got one weight off my mind. The linoleum permit is okay, so things can start moving in the nursery. Please God, by the time we need more linoleum, it will be easy to buy again. I had a really good day yesterday, besides the permit. I turned the kitchen cupboards out and worked on the spare room. Mrs. Shrub is a good soul. She has been spring cleaning, so I left her a note glowing with thanks. Apparently, Mrs. Shrub's husband is home, but she hasn't told him that she works for us, so she slips out at odd times. They must be very odd. The work has been done, but I never managed to see her.
Our theatre has to be seen to be believed. One man can work the whole lighting plot. It operates by machinery. The continent is about 50 years ahead of us in England. It's terrifying how a race with the artistic sensibilities of the Germans can have let themselves get directed into bestiality and cruelty. Don't worry about the nursery, darling. We'll do it together. Just see that the room is cleared and cleaned, and then we'll not waste any time. I signed the paper which empowers you to vote for me. Vote socialist, darling, and don't forget that you have a vote too.
I received 3 letters by the post this morning. It is really most confusing, as some arrive completely out of order. I'm so relieved that you received Reinhardt's letter at last. Now that I've thought it over, I prefer things this way. It means that you'll be able to help me in my studies, and I shall get on far better. Darling, don't make being good too much of a sacrifice. It will have an extremely bad reaction if you do. Make the most of your chance whilst you have it. Being a father is going to be a pretty full-time job.
It's terribly hot now, and the smell in Hamburg is unbearable. I don't go out, but stay in the dreary hotel. We have 3 matinees a week, so that fills in the time. I have a German dresser, and there are German staff in the theatre. They're falling over themselves to be polite and helpful. The other night, Larry and I were sitting on the side of the stage and wanted the masters to keep still while he took our photo. It meant a long exposure, so we sat there without moving for a minute, feeling very embarrassed. Speaking of embarrassment, they don't have separate lavatories on the continent, but men and women use the same. You open the door, and there, facing you, in the corner, is a stand-up place for the men, and on the right, one door for men and the other for women. When we were in Brussels, the women were all afraid to go, but used to ask a man to look in first to see if it was all clear. And there are places for men just built into the wall in the open street, with no protection or shelter at all.
How embarrassing it must be to have communal cloakrooms. Are they all like that? If I ever go to the continent, I shall burst. It would be awful to see a man standing round and... You know, is it like that everywhere? Take great care of yourself, but don't forget, I want you to have a wonderful time, because I shall hardly be fit to paint the town red when you get back.
Just received your letter of June the 1st. It's now the 10th. It's so confusing to realise that so much has happened since then. I'm so pleased that you like me in the broadcast, darling. I'm worried more over what you think than anybody. Went to the country club last night. Maggie Layton and I went up to a sort of private room with 6 very high-ranking officers. They gave Maggie 1 cocktail, and on that alone, they got her marching up and down the room, learning to salute the flag. A colonel pretended to be the flag, waving his hand in the air, and Maggie, marching to and fro with her beret slightly over one eye, was very funny indeed. The club is a most magnificent place, and was owned by a very prominent Nazi. Goering used to stay there. Everything in it is electric. You press a button, and the windows open or close. It has an interior swimming pool and an enormous garden. I'm going out there this afternoon to sit in the sun.
Only a few weeks now before you're home again. I can hardly believe it. I've had no official notification that I'm to act as your proxy voter, so I hope I won't have any trouble. There's a lot of strong feeling, as always, in this damned election. Parties slating one another on the air. The worst behaved are the Tories. Churchill has made some most unfortunate remarks. I'm eagerly trying to make a little campaign of my own, based entirely on your views. I've almost convinced myself that I know what I'm talking about. As a general rule, I found that the followers of the Labour Party seem to know more than the Tories. Most Tory supporters say we must stick by old Churchill, and that a Labour victory would be as dangerous as a German one would have been. Tomorrow, I'm ringing Reinhardt at the Reform Synagogue to hear how your letter has affected him.
A man called Leo Jen visited the theatre today. He is in charge of interrogating the SS officers at Belsen. At his request, we are going to play a matinee of arms there on Thursday for the British soldiers and medics. It's 60 miles away, and I don't know how we'll get back in time for Richard, but it's a very worthwhile thing to do. I heard all the details of the camp from Leo, but they're too horrible to write about. I saw a lot of German soldiers today. One was a lieutenant general. It's incredible how subservient they are now to the British, but they are still just as horrible as ever to their own men.
I saw Mr. Reinhardt yesterday, and I'm to start my studies with Dr. Schreiber on Friday morning. I spoke to him on the telephone this morning, and he sounds very nice, though he has a very thick accent. In fact, it was hard to understand him, as he would shout so loud. I think I'll offer to teach him to speak plainer in exchange for my lessons. I hope it won't be too expensive. I'll try and cram as much as I can into each lesson.
Still, the mail hasn't arrived. I wonder so much how you're getting on and if everything is all right with you. I suppose the tiddler is quite an infant by now, and your Hebrew studies are all completed. I had my hair cut today. The chap who did it is a wonderful character with the sweetest philosophy of life. He told me all about his wife, who was an English girl. He described her as a precious jewel. He was interned in England during the last war, and he said that unbeknownst to her family, his wife came to visit him every week. When he was sent back to Germany in 1917, she went with him. The British authorities tried to dissuade her, saying she would starve, but she just replied that her place was with her husband. Both their sons are missing. And I suddenly realized that German mothers and fathers have feelings too. They can't all be rotten. And I'm sure that it's our job to find out the decent Germans somehow and build a new nation round them.
I found some old nail varnish and have manicured and painted my nails. After all these months of abstinence, it makes me feel like a scarlet woman, except it's kind of purple colour. Still, it's nice to see my hands looking groomed.
I've seen Belsen. Such a short time ago I saw it on the screen, and yesterday I was actually there. I'm glad I've seen it, because if such horrors exist, one should not run away from them. We only had half an hour to look round as we had the show to do, but it will haunt me for months. As you go into the camp, there is a notice which says, "Here the British found 10,000 dead on May the 1st, and since then a further 15,000 have died. Here is an example of Nazi culture." The death rate is still about 15 a day, and when we arrived, some bodies were being buried. The British have been doing their best to give them decent burials. The original bodies are in huge graves, each with a notice on which says, "Here 2,500 are buried." Now they are put into trenches, each body with its own name, if possible. What brings home the real horror is smaller things. The hospital where babies have perhaps 2 days to live. A mother who saw her husband shot before her, and whose firstborn died in her arms, and who was now watching her other baby die, and who, as we left, plucked our sleeves, saying, "Danke, danke," thanking us just because we spoke to her. The camp is filled with little children of all ages who are the bastards of the SS troops at the camp. They took the young women as they came into Belsen and used them as prostitutes, and when they were going to have a baby and no good for the brothel, threw them into the camp. They were kept in huts about the size of our flat, 800 or 1,000 in each. They couldn't lie down or anything. They worked from 5 in the morning till 8 at night, and their food was coffee and bread at night and in the morning, and a litre of soup at midday. I could go on telling you about it for pages, but there's no point. I hate writing about it, and I'm sure you don't want to read it. It was very worthwhile going there to do the show for the British staff and soldiers. The doctors and nurses haven't seen anything for weeks, so you can imagine how much it was appreciated. We had no scenery and very little lighting, but we did it in costume and makeup, as if we were in a real theatre. We had to dash off at the end to do Richard in Hamburg, over 60 miles away, but the curtain was only 10 minutes late in going up. Still no mail? We're all getting livid now. I wonder so much how you are, and if all is well with you. The only consolation is it's nearly halfway. Sorry this letter is so dreary. I love you forever.
The letter you said was so dreary made my heart ache for those poor souls in Belsen. The story about the woman whose husband was shot, and of her 2 children, one was dead and the other dying, was almost too agonizing to read. It makes me feel I'd like to kill the brutes who caused it myself. God protect our baby from ever having to know about such tragedy. Please God, there will never be such suffering in the world again.
This is very difficult writing. I have the pad balanced on my knee, sitting with Larry on his balcony. There's a heat wave on, and we're both naked getting the sun. He asks after you a lot, and has such a nice way of comparing us to him and Vivian. It's incredible sitting up here looking out onto the ruins of Hamburg. In front of us is the charred remains of the station, and away in the distance, mile upon mile of rubble. The sun is terribly hot, and I do hope I'm not going to blister. It's going to be so odd getting back to England not to have wine with my meals. Out here, it's only 2 and 6 to 5 shillings a bottle, so we have it always. We also drink pretty awful synthetic brandy and liqueurs. I should hate to look at my liver. I'm sorry if this is rather illegible, but honestly, it's pretty difficult.
I have just had my first lesson and I'm so happy. You'll be able to help me a lot. Schreiber told me that very few people are interested in religion these days, and he is relying on me to teach others when I have finished. He makes it all so straightforward and so interesting. He tells me that learning Hebrew will be child's play. I'll believe that when it's proved. I should be seeing him again next Friday, but I'm rehearsing for a broadcast. I shall see if I can be let off. We're rehearsing all day Thursday too, so I shall have to vote early in the morning. You were rather silly to suddenly start sunbathing. The heat's been terrific, and your skin can only take a little sun at first. Still, perhaps you are tougher than I am.
I'm a bit shaky. We had a wonderful party last night given by the military governor. The swankiest do yet. Generals and brigadiers were 2 a penny. And the food and the drink. It was really terrific. They had a cabaret, which lasted for about an hour. Honestly, darling, you know I love you very dearly, but I was sitting right at the front, about 2 feet away from some of the dancers. And I'm afraid that at times I was pretty nearly mentally unfaithful. As for the officers, well, I thought some of them would pass out. You must remember they've had no contact at all with women since they've been in Germany, and the artists didn't make it any easier. They just ooze sex. But it was all right, darling. I went straight home afterwards. We're off to Paris soon, and then it's the last lap. I just can't believe it. I love you so much, my darling.
From your letters, it seems that you spend your time in a permanent state of intoxication. If you stayed away much longer, it wouldn't be the drink that would get you. It would be those gorgeous females from the cabarets. Poor darling, what a glamour girl you've got waiting for you.
They gave us a wonderful farewell at the theatre. The brigadier came onto the stage and made some silly speech, but I must say that on the whole, I thought it was pretty exciting. I'm afraid that I am just a bit squiffy. We're flying to Paris first thing. I've half done my packing, but I can't face anymore. Anyway, the lights have fused and I'm writing this by candlelight. But, tight or sober, I love you more than anything in the world and just had to write to you. I love you. I love you. I love you, I love you, I love you. I thought it would be rather fun to write to you 20,000 feet above sea level. It couldn't be steadier. The sun is shining, and far below are miles of fields looking like geometrical squares. This is certainly the best way to travel. All others seem to be terribly slow and tedious. I've just been into the control room of the plane. The captain let me take the wheel, or whatever it's called, and for quite a few minutes I was the sole pilot. Seems awfully easy. I think that one day we'll have to get our own plane, darling. Larry has just leant over to try to read who I'm writing to. He sends his love and says he'll see you next week, over my dead body. Darling, I must have a look at the view again. I love you. In the air as well.
This is the most uncomfortable radio studio I've ever been in. Tiddler doesn't like it at all. I don't think he wants to be an actor. This morning, I dutifully went along to vote to find a queue. I didn't stay after 9:30, as I had to get to rehearsal, so I shall have to go back afterwards. We had a read-through this morning at Rothwell House. I think it's going to be a good show. This week you're at the Comedy, aren't you? When I think of the stage, it all seems so far away, like a dream. And yet I only left 6 weeks ago.
Darling, Paris is all you have read about, heard about, or dreamed about. There's something magical in the air. I felt it as soon as I stepped out of the plane at Le Bourget and walking down the Rue Saint-Laurent, the Rue de la Paix, the Place Vendôme. It just takes you in its arms. The beautiful shops with their elegant dresses, £50 each, and soft shimmering underwear, all on point and just unbelievably expensive. And the women. It's all true, darling. Never have I seen anything so chic in my life. Every girl you see has something about her. They haven't been able to buy clothes for years, and so they improvise. They make skirts out of curtains and cut them so beautifully that even the meanest of them look sensational. Oh, how you would love it here. We will come together one day, my darling. All the top people here have been invited to a party at the Comédie Française tonight, and for some reason I have been included. I'm looking forward to it very much indeed, and will tell you all about it. A gloom has descended over me about coming back to the Vic. I didn't write yesterday because I didn't want to depress you. I suppose I will get over it, but the thought of the 2 understudies and the chorus in Oedipus is a mighty burden. I have made up my mind on one score. We must never be parted again. It's normal for 2 people who are in love and who love each other to be together. And if they are not, then something in the end is bound to happen. One can only be strong for so long. It's all right, dearest, I've been completely faithful. But oh dear, these Parisian women. It's getting near my call, so I will finish this tonight after the party. I love you completely, my darling.
The director of this broadcast has just asked me to do a good part in a 6-week serial. It's going to be out on the home and on the overseas, so it would mean over £100 to us. Everyone has been asking about you so tenderly. We seem to be the dear newlyweds.
This is the noblest thing I've ever done. I've just dragged myself out of bed in order to finish this letter to catch the post, but darling, my head, every time I move it, a large sledgehammer wallops me. It was wonderful last night. The privilege of meeting all those people. I suddenly thought during supper, me, Sidney T., meeting the actors of the Comédie Française on equal terms. And then I had another glass of champagne. Mr. Duff Cooper, the British ambassador, was there, and it's no good, dearest. I can't describe how truly glamorous it was. We didn't get back till 2, and then Larry came up to my room with Peter, and we had a drink. And that's why I feel so peculiar this morning. This is an awful letter, darling, but I'll write a more coherent one later on today. I love you. I love you. Fidèle à toi.
Oh, it's so hot in the studio and out of it. I feel like a grease spot. Last night I went along to vote, and by the time I'd got back, I was so tired I went straight to bed. There was a mix-up about your vote. I should have had some notification of being your proxy apart from your letter. It seems to have happened in a great many cases. Anyway, I voted.
I'm sorry that my letter yesterday was rather chaotic, but I was a bit overcome with the whole thing. I met one of the actresses from the Comédie Française today, and she took me all over the theatre. When you're accepted by the comedy, you stay all your life, so the actors furnish their dressing rooms entirely to their own taste. They're like room sets from Heels or Maples. They have a lounge or salon, presumably for entertaining, a curtained-off room with a couch, and a make-up room. I've never seen such luxury. What they're going to think when they see our terrible theatre, I tremble to think. Dressing room number 9 will bring them back to earth with a bump. I managed to get John into a corner yesterday to have a chat. At one stage, he had almost agreed for me to do only one understudy and not be an Oedipus, but now he says he will release me from some of the Oedipus rehearsals, provided that I do both understudies. It's a bit better, and will mean that I won't have to go to the show on Oedipus days till about 7:30.
I had my second lesson this morning, and next week I'm going to have 2. Dr. Schreiber has started to teach me Hebrew, 5 minutes each lesson. These first 2 lessons have been chiefly discussions, and next time I'm starting to learn the practical side. I have some notes to make sure of, and the Shema to learn. It's all so logical, and I'm terribly eager to learn more. There's so much I want to talk to you about. As you have been taught in the Orthodox way, you'll probably find that my lessons are rather different. Dr. Schreiber may be able to help me get a mezuzah. The one he has on his door is very attractive. He says that it's obvious that I love you very much, as the pencil I took to write notes with was rather blunt.
I feel a bit better today, more able to cope with things. This morning I walked up to the Arc de Triomphe. You feel everywhere the French love of France. It is somehow quite different to our love of England. It's not patriotism as we know it, but more like the love of a man for his wife, and you cannot help being swept away with it. There's only one way to describe it all. It's completely French. As is their approach to driving a motor car. Every time you cross the road, you take your life in your hands. There's no control whatsoever, except a stupid gendarme who never stops blowing a whistle, but no one takes the slightest notice. The cars often crash into each other, but that is quite taken for granted, and there are no inquests at all. It's a miracle that I'm still alive. Darling, send me by return your bust, waist, and hip measurements. Do this at once, won't you, sweetheart? I will at least be able to get you a couple of brassieres, I think.
At the moment, it seems impossible that this show can ever go on the air. There are various numbers to rehearse for those who have songs. Fortunately, I'm involved only in the opening chorus. Someone plays the piano, someone else the banjo, and one of the company does a tap dance. Edward Chapman cannot turn up until about 4:30 tonight, and there is a difficult scene when a riot breaks out at the theatre. Phew. And now I must get back to work.
I wonder if you managed to vote for me. The Folie Bergère yesterday was really first-rate, elaborately staged, cleverly lit, and a very good comedian. But there were so many nudes that it got rather boring, except there was one who was really lovely. I went back to the hotel just after midnight. It's awful there being no mail from you. The last time I heard was last Monday, and that letter was written on June the 20th. I heard about some silk stockings the other day. I think they want about £4, 10 shillings a pair for them, but if they are really nice, I'll get a pair, just for high days and holy days. Also, I'm going to try and get you some wedge shoes. They're the smartest things in Paris at the moment. They have sort of gay-coloured tops, and the wedges are of wood, but they say they are very comfortable. I shall take Joyce or Maggie with me to get them. I'm just off to rehearse Richard as we open tonight. Honestly, darling, whatever happens to me in the theatre after this, I'm certain that playing here will be pretty well the high spot.
I have been over to the linoleum shop this morning, and they have promised to deliver it and lay it on Tuesday morning early. It's not utility, and I had to pay a few shillings more per square yard, but there is no comparison in the quality. I think it's worthwhile to spend a bit more in such cases.
Last night, when the curtain came down, the house lights were put on and we could see the whole audience standing in and on their seats just cheering. It was wonderful. We took curtain after curtain. Larry made the sweetest speech in French, which had taken him 3 days to learn. Ralph has taken a back seat to Larry in Paris. Peer Gynt doesn't seem to be quite the success that Richard is, and of course Richard is a much more showy part. I'm rather sorry for Ralph's sake. I'm off to the country club this morning, and I'm going to a casino this afternoon, so I have a pretty full day with Richard thrown in the evening. I want to be home so desperately. If I stay away from you for much longer, I shall finish up a dipsomaniac.
I shan't write again, as I doubt if even this letter will reach you before you return. It's rather a thrilling thought, but it'll seem funny not writing. It's the next best thing to talking to you.
No letters for days and days, and then 6 have come at once. Lovely letters, darling. You sounded so happy about everything. I'm so glad that you like Mr. Schreiber. It's all so wonderful. I adore the simple way you just said, I have to learn the Shema. That is the first prayer that a Jewish child is taught, and you will be able to teach it to our baby. I hated it when you used to say, we do so-and-so and you do so-and-so. Soon that will all be over and it will just be we, and it will mean both of us. Our children will never have to say, why is Mummy one thing and Daddy another? I love you so much, my dearest, and I'm so proud of you. I have no way of putting onto paper what I feel inside me. I only want to take you in my arms and hold you there. By the time you receive this letter, I may be home. We have another party to go to tomorrow. We've really been fated all over Paris. I love you forever, my darling.
What can I say? I'm so unbearably excited that I can't think straight. I do hope you'll find home as nice as you've dreamt it. It will seem very quiet after Paris. Tiddler was born on the 16th of September 1945 and was given the name Jennifer. It took a little longer to convert to Judaism than Joy had hoped, but she achieved it by the time their next Tiddler, Jeremy, was born a couple of years later in 1947.
In the same year, Sidney made his cinematic breakthrough in an Ealing Studios film, It Always Rains on Sunday, playing a record shop owner and part-time band leader with an eye for the ladies. The part brought recognition and success that would continue for all of his career. He died in 1979.
Joy made family her first priority, but she appeared in films such as Green Gage Summer and HMS Defiant, and co-starred in the long-running radio serial PC-49. As her children grew, she returned to the theatre, touring the country and working in the West End until she died in 2000.
I love you, dearest, forever.
Dearest, I love you so much.
Your devoted husband,
Always your adoring wife,
Sidney.
Joy.
You got to smile when you say goodbye. You got to smile as the days go by. And all the time that you're away, I'm thinking of you. I'll write and say from day to day how much I love you. You got to smile when you say goodbye.